What's up? What's up? You know what time it is, man. It is 5-star matchups, baby. Let's get it going, man, because as you already know, man, these matchups are what I think are going to be pivotal matchups to follow in this game against the New England Patriots. I think if the Steelers win the majority of these matchups, the likelihood of them being successful on Sunday will be great for your Pittsburgh Steelers. So, with that being said, man, the first matchup I do want to talk about starts on that offense and defensive line, man. We got Trent Brown, the left tackle for the New England Patriots, versus Alex Highsmith. Now, Trent Brown is a really good left tackle in this league, and he has been for a while now. But at this stage, he is starting to slow down a little bit. Still very physical, still good against the run, and for the most part, good against the pass. The issue is speed rushers, and more importantly, him being able to bend. That is the part of his game where he's struggling a lot more at this stage. Now, when we're talking about Alex Highsmith, though, that's where he's really starting to come on even stronger now. We saw that obviously in the first game against the Bengals where he went for 3 sacks, but more importantly, the manner in which he was winning. Speed, also using his bend and athletic ability. Those are some of the things that I feel he's going to make Trent Brown have issues with. But this is one of those ones where for Alex, in terms of those tests, Jonah Williams was a good test to start it out week 1, former first-round draft pick and everything like that. But Trent Brown is a far better player than Jonah Williams. So for this one, we're going to see, can Alex Highsmith continue on his trajectory and with this productivity that we've been seeing from him, because it's going to be needed. No TJ Watt this week. So in order for our pass rush to still be as feared, to still be as dominant as it was, we're going to need Alex Highsmith to have a big one today, man, or a big one on Sunday. And like I said, I think it's going to be competitive because Trent is a really good player. Don't get it twisted. But this is one of those ones where Highsmith should be feeling good about this matchup, and I do expect him to win the majority of these. So that's the first matchup. But now it's time for that second matchup, and that one is spinning the block going on our offensive line versus Matthew Judon. More importantly, our left and right tackles, Dan Moore and CHUKS. Now, the reason I include both of those guys because Matthew Judon is a guy that plays both sides. He will rush off the right, he'll rush off the left. Last year he had 12.5 sacks. This year he already has 1 sack. Overall, Matthew Judon is just a really good football player. Physical, against the run, very fundamentally sound, plays with his hands. I love the way that he's able to anticipate certain calls. Very cerebral. You're not going to trick this guy. He gets a lot of his productivity, though, in terms of his sacks versus play action passes versus naked boots versus tight ends and running backs. Like I said, very, very smart, cerebral guy. You're not going to trick him. But in terms of his overall just ability to win one-on-one pass rushes, that's where I am not as optimistic for Matthew Judon in this matchup. Now, Matthew, I do expect to make a ton of plays because he's just that type of player. But the areas where he cannot be dominant, where he cannot make those type of plays is in the pass game. And this is when we're talking about Dan and CHUKS. I personally feel like, especially with CHUKS, I think that he's to the stage where he should be able to handle Matthew Judon. When we're talking about Dan Moore, I think that he'll struggle at times, but the thing that I feel optimistic about Dan is this. Dan hasn't struggled with power rushers. He hasn't struggled with guys that go to outwork him. Dan struggles with speed rushers. Dan struggles with that speed to power or the ability to dip and bend. Matthew Judon, that's not really his game. So I do think that Dan will be able to be more competitive and just continue on with some of the positivity that we saw from him last week. I also anticipate some tight end action to help him at times. But Matthew Judon versus our tackles, we have to just make this competitive. Make him have to work for every single thing. Do not give him that game-breaking strip sack, that game-breaking play where we know that's what this Patriots team is going to be needing. Because when we're looking at, both rosters, it's not a lot of personnel on New England's side where you're going to be saying, man, they have this big advantage. But this is potentially one of those matchups where we could see them feeling good about it. But I do anticipate Dan and CHUKS making this a lot more competitive and not allowing Judon to take off like he typically does in some of these games. But this is a very, very important matchup, man, for our offense, all right? So now it's time for the next matchup, the fourth one, which is obviously another critical matchup. And this one is unique in a sense. when we're talking about the Patriots tight ends, on paper, they are really good. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, whether you're talking about them at previous locations, the productivity, we've seen them when they are featured, how well they can play. But we also know that these two guys have had a very unique injury history where their availability has not been as consistent as they would like. And more importantly, when we're talking about those two tight ends in New England, they haven't been featured as much either. But those two guys in particular versus our three inside linebackers, Miles Jack, Devin Bush, and Robert Spillane. Now, we've seen all three of our linebackers last week have positive performances and positive productivity in the pass game. Whether you're talking Miles Jack with some of his man-to-man coverage, whether you're talking Devin Bush isolated on the outside, clutch performance in the fourth quarter, him one-on-one with the running back, taking a shot at the end zone, him making a play. Robert Spillane playing good in space, but more importantly, not just being good in zone coverage, but tackling the catch when it was some of the man concepts. I thought all three of those guys did positive things in terms of the coverage element of it. Now, New England, if you're asking, hey, how can this offense hurt our defense? It's not really going to be on the perimeters with these wide receivers. You look at run game, but more importantly, these tight ends versus our inside linebackers. That's the key for this Patriots offense to get cooking. And they're going to run a ton of 12 personnel where both of those tight ends are going to be out there versus our inside linebackers. So this is one where our guys have to be, number one, communicating. All right, you don't want to have any blown coverages against this team. Number two, you just got to make sure that you're tackling the catch. Are they going to get open at times? Yes, but you have to tackle the catch, get them on the ground. And the third thing is this. I'm not going to act like the Patriots have featured these guys in their offense because last week they did not. And even last season, it wasn't as consistent. Now, part of that was due to the injuries, and I understand that. But there is a chance that, hey, if New England does get a little bit more under control, because right now they're kind of all over the place offensively. And part of that is because they don't have, your traditional offensive coordinator. There's a little bit of transition right there. But if they do decide to focus on these guys, this is going to be the matchup for us that we have to be winning. And that's our inside linebackers versus their tight ends. All right. Now, this is a very, very important matchup right here. And that's why it's number 4 on this list, man. We're talking about the Patriots rushing attack versus our front seven. Yeah. Now, on paper, when you look at the statistics from the Patriots last week, they didn't have a crazy productive rushing game. No, I think it was 20-something carries, about 75, 80 yards. Nothing over the moon, nothing to be alarmed about. But the thing is this. It is their identity. They are very intentional in terms of sticking with the run. And for context purposes, think a couple of years ago for us offensively, or even last year offensively, whenever our running game wasn't what it wanted or wasn't to the point that we would want it to be, we would completely abandon it. Okay, and we would have games where we're only running the ball 10 to 15 times. Just not enough attempts, not enough just allowing these guys to stay balanced. The Patriots, on the flip side, do a really good job of that. They do not allow themselves to become one-dimensional typically. They will continue to run that ball with Ramondre Stevenson and obviously Damian Harris. And both of those guys, they did have some success on the ground, but like I said, they're not running backs in the sense of like a Joe Mixon. They're not a Najee Harris type, but they are good. And when you allow this offense to stay balanced, it ultimately keeps them from being exposed to negativity. It keeps Mac Jones from having to have a ton of passing attempts. And for us defensively, I think that if we stop this run and make this offense have to pass, that bodes extremely well for us. We want them to throw that ball more. We don't want them to be able to continue to run this ball and stay balanced and stay in third and manageable situations. So that is why it's going to be critical for our front seven. More importantly, Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, and these inside linebackers to set the tone early. Make this Patriots offense understand that they are not going to be able to run the ball. They're going to have to rely on Mac Jones' arm. And that will be a huge step in the right direction for this Steelers team. And more importantly, the Steelers defense that will be without one of their key players by the name of TJ Watt. But that brings us to the 5th and final key matchup for the 5-star matchups. And that is Mac Jones versus MINKAN FITZPATRICK. Now, why is this important? Well, we were just talking about stopping the run, making this team one-dimensional. And why is that important? Because Mac Jones, I personally don't think that he can beat us throwing the ball exclusively. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes when he's back there. Part of that is his smarts Other part is at times this offense is very conservative. This offense is not very explosive, and part of that is because they don't have a lot of talent at the wide receiver positions right now. Well, we know what Minkah Fitzpatrick is, the reigning AFC Defensive Player of the Week. Hello. And we know that he's also pissed off, man. He has something to prove this year, and rightfully so. He's been disrespected on multiple occasions when you're talking about the rankings of, the current safeties in the NFL right now. But Minkah's one of those guys, man, that's very cerebral. He's a guy that understands how to bait quarterbacks into stuff. He understands how to go and attack the ball and how to make plays. And we have to remember, Mac Jones is still very young. This is his second year in the league. He has a totally new offensive coordinator dynamic right now with two guys that aren't offensive coordinators. So he's still going through those growing pains as well. This is one of those ones, man, where Mac Jones, he will have one or two of those plays where he gives the defense a chance. Minkah has to capitalize on them. And I think that he will, but it starts with us stopping that run to give Minkah these type of opportunities. Now, for me, I think this is one where it might not happen very frequently. It won't be like how it was last week versus Joe Burrow. But I do feel like when Mac Jones gives you those opportunities, it's going to be on Minkah to capitalize on it. And if he does that, if he's able to create the turnover, the splash play, that to me will be the biggest difference in this matchup between the Steelers and Patriots on Sunday. But as we always do, man, y'all let me know your thoughts on these 5-star matchups. Definitely appreciate you tuning in. And also make sure you like this video, subscribe if you have not done so, and more importantly, hit that notification bell. But I appreciate each and every one of y'all. And until next time, baby. Peace.